interesting about when we see him interviewed as well is that John talks about the job going forward. He doesn't talk about it just as if this is the only game I'm in charge for. He talks about in-game management, tournament football, how to qualify. He mentions there. You're talking about having phone calls with James potentially in the future. You know, so he's thinking about this for the longer period. So he's not just setting the stall out for now. You can tell he's actually thinking, well, if I do get the job, I want to put things in place when I go forward. The players know how I want to play. They understand how we potentially can qualify and who I'm going to be using in these teams. So I think for him, he's doing everything he can potentially to get the job, and he gets a good result tonight and it puts him in pole position.
James, if you were in the position to do so, if you were still in that dressing room, and you could be again in the not too distant future, would you give John O'Shea the job?
Absolutely. I don't see you've nothing to lose by doing so. People get fixated on, oh, he hasn't got the experience, but how do you get experience? You get experience by being in the role. Like, I'm not saying John is Pep Guardiola, but if you look the time, Guardiola had no experience when he got the Barcelona job. Like, I think he had a year or two at the Barcelona B team. So you don't know until he's in that role. And I think so far, he's done pretty okay so far. If you look at the teams we've played, they're ranked a lot higher than us. You know, missed a penalty against Belgium. Probably should have won that game. Switzerland, good side, got beat with a free kick. And then obviously beating Hungary, who's for 14 games unbeaten and going quite well. So I think he's done an alright job so far. And let's be honest, it's not like, you know, the process now, we're nearly a year into the process and we still haven't had a manager. So, you know, it's a bit of a farce in that sense. So I think John's done his chances no harm whatsoever.
So you use the word farce to describe what has happened in the search for
I think it is.
new manager.
We're nearly a year on, and each week there's a new name mentioned and this person's been interviewed, and I like to be flying the wall to see what's actually going on in these interviews, because look, I might be naive, but I think it's a pretty good job to have. So for people to keep turning it down, it begs the question, what's actually going on?
Yeah, I think they're very lucky as well to have someone like John that they're kind of stringing along in some sense. You know, they at one point he didn't know whether he was taking over as interim manager for the second lot of games, and they still have someone that seems really keen on the job. Yeah, he doesn't have the managerial experience that they want, but to have someone that's won Premier League titles, that's been part of Champions League teams, that's won FA Cups, that's got over 100 caps for Ireland, you know, at some point the player at that level, their ego is going to kick in and they're going to say, no, you know, you're either going to want to take me on now or you don't. And John has you know, tied the line very well, and he's doing everything he can against decent teams. You know what I mean? Stephen Kenny took a friendly game against Andorra to get his first win in charge. John O'Shea's beat Hungary, and he's played third in the world, but sixth in the world, 24th in Hungary. You know, they're different levels. I know they're friendlies.
We see just that point, Stephen. You know, making a decision such as this, and the FAI have taken such a long time over it. Is it dangerous basing the final decision on a series of friendlies?
No, it is dangerous, and John is not the criteria for it. They came out and said they want a manager that's got international experience and club experience. Now, I don't know how often you find that manager that's got both of those, but that's what they wanted. They haven't been able to find that at this point, and the names have been banned around. They've interviewed such an array of managers that don't fit the criteria of what they talk about. And then you have John O'Shea now, who's taken over at the moment and is doing a really steady job. If you give it to him or not, I think he's a position that can learn as the job goes on, and he's talking about the right way for us to qualify for the tournament. It's difficult, but they should have solved it by now. And as James said, it's been farcical that it hasn't been resolved at this point.
And like James, you know, you have been impressed with the way the team has progressed over these games.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, again, we touch on, we've been hard. Don't get me wrong, for the purists, the games haven't been exciting, but that suits us. Like, we give up possession. There's nothing wrong with giving up possession. We've been hard to beat, and we've got decent results against higher ranked teams. So, look, we've always been hard to beat. That's always been our foundation. Like, so what? Like, give up possession. Like, if you won G games, then so be it. You know, again, we get fixated on statistics. We might have 60% possession. Yeah, but we knocked it around the back line. We didn't do anything with it. I've always been kind of old school mentality. I just want to win games. I don't care how I won games, as long as I won games. And, you know, we were quite successful in the past in doing it that way.
Yeah, we